You're in high school or middle school, also known as secondary school, over here in the African region, and you have heard about debating either from a friend or classmate, and you're unsure about what this entails or what it looks like when you take it competitively. Or you're a parent or an adult either hearing about debating classes for your kids or institution, and you're wondering if it's a worthwhile extracurricular for your kids to dabble in. Well, this video is for you to inform you about what debating is and what it looks like when you take it in the competitive sense. Hi, my name is Toby and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am a debater, public speaker, and civil engineer by trade. I started debating competitively in 2023 under the University of Ilorin Debate Club, which is arguably one of the best debate unions in Nigeria and also one of the top debating universities worldwide. I have participated in a lot of British parliamentary tournaments, both online and some, or rather, a little bit less physically, but I've participated in a lot online. And I've been able to break in both capacities as a speaker and a judge, even though I've not yet broken in most of the majors, which is like worlds and pans. It's a goal that I aspire to get. But the main part of this introduction is to just let you know that I do have a lot of experience in debating, rather, and I understand what it's all about. And so this video basically is based on those experiences that I've been able to collect over the past couple of years. As such, it may not necessarily be the same with some places or some individuals' experiences. So it just basically to let you guys know that I might not necessarily be correct in most of everything. Sorry, in some of the things that I say, especially for people with different experiences, right? But this is based on the experiences that I've been able to gather and would probably mostly be correct, especially when you come to the African region because I'm from Africa, and that is where like my debating basically like centered around, right? Not the international circuit. Okay, um, going on to what we'll be learning in today's class. The first thing I will be looking at is what debating is, and then what competitive debating is, types or styles of competitive debating, debating which prioritize logic and examples, debating which prioritize evidence and examples of this kind of debating, roles in competitive debating, and the most important aspect of this video, which is why debating makes you smarter. So, what is debating? So, debating is a structured discussion where two or more sides present and clash ideas on a specific topic, and each side tries to prove through this discussion why their side is better, logical, practical, and so on, depending on the topic or motion they are discussing. A good thing to note is that debating is not an argument. You're not necessarily trying to win over each other, right? In a normal sense. So when you're debating against maybe your family members or your friends or maybe other professional individuals with you in the workplace, the point should not necessarily be to win over them, but rather to learn from them. Because there may be some things that you don't necessarily know about the other side that maybe the person you're debating against is defending. And so through clashing, you guys are able to learn more about each other's side and also able to sort of strengthen you guys' side, because each clash would reveal a flaw or a problem with your side, and you're able to think about it and then reinforce that your side better, so that when next you want to maybe argue that same kind of topic, you now have a better like concept to give the opposition or the opposing side when you guys want to do the debate. So what is competitive debating then? Competitive debating is a structured form of public speaking in which individuals or teams argue opposing sides of a motion within a set format using logical reasoning, evidence, and rebuttal with the goal of persuading an adjudicator or audience to prefer their side. I think the major differences between competitive debating and normal debating is that in normal debating, the end goal is not necessarily to win. So at the end of the day, even though you guys have been able to sort of like expose the flaws and problem in his side, you guys still have the leeway to say that, oh, I still support my side, but I've been able to learn a lot, and you guys shake hands and you're done with it when you're doing debating. But in competitive debating, you guys don't necessarily have the authority to make that decision. Rather, that decision is up to an adjudicator, and that's who you're trying to convince. Majority of debates, the adjudicator is an average intelligent voter, so it's someone that has at least some knowledge of a lot of some things that are happening in the world, but it's not necessarily somebody that knows everything at the end of the day or is specific in a particular area of study. So that means you have to try as much as possible to convince that average intelligent voter that, oh, your side is good, or even audience, which are just like a group of average intelligent voter at the end of the day, that your side is good. Now, competitive debating is majorly divided into two types or styles, and we have the traditional style of debating and the modern style of debating. So in the traditional style of competitive debating, um, it's a two-sided format in which participants defend or oppose a motion through single prepared speeches delivered to judges or an audience. And the concept for traditional competitive debating is that there's more emphasis on your argument presentation over sustained rebuttals, because you do not even have chance to rebut the opponent. What you do have is the first speeches that you have for each side. So after that, the debate ends. I think the second thing is that in this particular type of format, the rules are not necessarily fixed. They are easily fluid. So what I mean is that, for example, when it comes to time, it might differ depending on the audience and the event basically that this debate is happening. So for some debates it might be 5 minutes, for some debate it might be 4 minutes, especially if it's like children that are doing the debate, and if it's adults the time might be much more longer. But the fact is that the fact that they are doing one speeches means that you don't necessarily have opportunity to rebut the other person after they are done with their speech. And so the other thing is that the motions basically, and this is something that I'm pretty sure that a lot of people in the African region would have seen, maybe in their high school or in their primary school, the emotions are very general. So it looks like things like, oh, teachers are better than farmers, or teachers are better than lawyers, all these sort of general topics that is good to introduce children to the concept of debating, or even introduce audience to the concept of debating at the end of the day. But in the modern style of competitive debating, the differences start to show, in the sense that in the modern style there is a fixed set of rules and guidelines rather to help there's a fixed set of rules and guidelines rather to help the judges basically judge properly, or rather there's a fixed set of rules and regulations that the judges must prioritize when they are judging you. There's a fixed set of time for each speaker. There's more than one speaker, and which means that there's opportunity to rebut people when they give their speech or rebut their arguments at the end of the day. Now, there's a lot of different formats under the modern style of competitive debating, but majority of all of them fall under two categories, which is firstly debating that prioritizes logic, and debate that prioritize evidence. And so before I get into these two types of debating, I would just like to say that all forms of debating fundamentally depend on two things. The first is logic, that is sound logic, which is basically the causal link of things, or the causal logic that sort of explains the causal links of things. So basically explaining why A leads to B, leads to C, and leads to D, which is probably going to be your endpoint. If one part of this step is missing, then it means that your logical chain is broken, or there's a gap in your logical chain, which makes the argument that you're presenting less persuasive to judges. The other thing that debating also runs on is evidence. So basically you must have done your research, and you probably have maybe the evidence that you have gotten from that your research, either in form of statistical data, or in form of maybe in form of links to show that, oh, somebody in proper authority, maybe somebody that is working in that field, has said something that supports your point at the end of the day. And so the first format rather, which is debating that prioritize logic, is just basically that. In this format, the emphasis that the judges are looking at, or rather what the judges are going to prioritize, is your causal link or the logic that you're using, not the evidence. Because in these particular types of debating, there's no way for the judges to actually verify whether the evidence you use is true. So for all they know, you may necessarily be lying, inflating figures or statistics at the end of the day. But if you are sound in your logic, if you're able to explain those causal links properly, then they have every reason to find your argument much more persuasive. Examples of these formats are World Scholars Cup, which is for children; World School Debate, which is for the high school, secondary school level; British Parliamentary and Asian Parliamentary, which is what you do in like the university level at the end of the day. So for British Parliamentary and Asian Parliamentary, I think other forms of debating, other examples of different formats broadly falls under these two, because they share a lot of similarities with British Parliamentary or Asian Parliamentary. So, for example, CNDF, which is the Canadian debate format, shares a lot of similarities with Asian Parliamentary, although there are slight differences in maybe the time that each speaker has, but it's basically opposition, proposition, three speakers, and reply. But the time format is different at the end of the day. And then there is debating that prioritize evidence and example. So this means that in this debating, you might have logic, but if you do not have the proper evidence supporting that logic, then you're less persuasive. And so it's here where children or debaters have to sort of do a lot of research. They have to get like links that shows or supports that particular side that they want to defend. And in their argument, anytime they are making a point, they have to have like those evidence attached to those points directly. This form of debating is what you would see mostly in the international scene, because they actually like mirror what happens in the international scene, especially in things like the Congress and all of that, where you have a lot of senators that want to pass a bill, and they have to bring a lot of evidence through their research supporting that bill and why they think it will be good. And then other people would also question them that, oh, they don't like this bill because of social reasons and all of that at the end of the day, which now later determines whether the bill is passed or the bill is rejected. And in both sides, the major thing to note is that logic and evidence are needed. It's just that the level of logic and the level at which you would prioritize logic and evidence differs on which form of debating you're using. So, for example, if you are debating in formats that fall under the first one that prioritize logic, you would focus more on making your logic sound, and then maybe you can mention one or two statistics, maybe that are true or not true. While in the second format, you can focus on having sound logic, but you'd probably have to have evidence supporting that logic. If not, another team that does not have that much good logic but has proper evidence to support their claim will still beat you. Roles in competitive debating. So there are only two roles in competitive debating, or rather in debating in general, which is the speaking role and the judge role. So for formats like WSC, World Scholars Cup, and WSD, World Schools Debate, they are majorly done by students in primary classes up to secondary school, high school. They focus on the speaker role more because these guys are not yet like experienced. They are not yet experienced in handling judging, or even the kind of like pressure that comes with judging, and so they leave judging to much more experienced adults that already understand what judging would be like. But when you get to the university level, there's a focus on both the speaker and judging roles at the end of the day, and so those are majorly the two roles. But when you are in like primary school or secondary school, I don't think they focus more on judging, although they could do judging maybe in spa rounds, just so that they are able to learn what judges would want to know, or rather want to hear when they are debating. Just a good way for them to understand the aspect of judges in general. Sorry about that. And the last thing, which is the most important thing, which is why debating makes one smarter. So there are a lot of reasons why debating makes a person smarter or makes you smarter. But here are some reasons why I think debating makes one smarter in general? I think the first thing is that it forces you to think for both sides of any situation or topic and reduce your bias. Bias is majorly when you have like a very strong inclination over towards a particular thing. It could probably be because of indoctrination. Maybe you grew up in that particular thing, and you see this mostly in like religious, when especially when you're doing like religious debates and all of that, right? And what debating forces you to do is to actually like look at what the other side of the world would look like, and maybe force you to defend them, because when you're debating, you're not necessarily in control of which side of the debate that you would be in. That is probably left up to the judges, or even like an AI that sort of like does the allocation of sides, right? And so it means that almost 90% of the time you would be put in a particular position that you're not necessarily okay with, or you're not necessarily like you're not inclined towards, and you would have to think for those particular side that, oh, where are these guys coming from, and what do they like, what is their issue, what do they actually want us to solve, and all of that, right? Which is good, because not every time that you would be on a side that you support. Sometimes you might be on the opposite side of things, and you need to be able to have like a logical case to back your side. The second thing, in terms of reason why it makes one smarter, is that it teaches you how to come up with ideas and arguments quickly. So for every style of debating, you're always given a specific time limit to prepare your cases, and after that time limit is done, you would have to give your cases or give your speeches directly. And what that does is that it trains people to sort of have or think of ideas much more faster, because the more you're able to generate ideas quickly during the prep time or the preparation time that debate formats give you, the more chances that you have to like really like go through those ideas properly and reinforce them. And so when you're even debating normally with people, you're able to think of those ideas pretty fast. The third reason is that it lets you learn how to be confident and support your ideas even if you're not sure of them. And I think this is basically as a result of the first two reasons. So if you're able to think of the other side of any topic, no matter how not inclined you are towards it, and you're able to come up with arguments for those sides very quickly, it means that when you're supporting the arguments, even if you're not sure of the arguments, right, but you have been able to sort of reinforce them to be able to defend themselves against any sort of rebuttal, you'd be very confident when you're delivering your speech, which is a very good thing, because confidence is what majorly people look out for when they want to buy something, right? When they want to actually support your side, how confident is this person that I want to support, which makes you much more persuasive at the end of the day. The last one for today is that it teaches you how to be persuasive with logic, even if the facts are against you. So a major thing about debating is that if your logic is sound, even if in real life that particular thing is untrue, you still be able to win the debate, which is a very interesting thing and nice thing for people to learn how to do at the end of the day. So this is the end of the video. I do hope that this video has been able to properly educate you about debating, at least enlighten you about what debating looks like in general and also in the competitive sense. I will be making much more videos on different aspects of debating, different skills as well to learn in debating. And I do hope you like and subscribe to support my channel as well, just so that I'm motivated to drop more videos on this particular topic. Thank you everyone, and have a nice weekend.